Good morning, everybody. I hope that you're well on this lovely sunny Tuesday morning. I'm Sarah Banks from Banks' Business Solutions, and this morning I'm here to talk to you about GDPR post the 25th of May, as well as sharing some key information about the importance of contracts and lawful basis for processing data under GDPR, as I know this is something that's been confusing a lot of people. So I'm hoping that some people will be joining us live this morning for this chat, and I'm more than happy to answer questions as we go through, so please pop those in the comments box, and I'll be popping in later on today as well to pick up any comments there. So if you couldn't join us live, then I'll be more than happy to answer questions later on. So GDPR was this huge thing prior to the 25th of May. It had a lot of us panicked and stressed, and actually there wasn't any need to be. The world didn't blow up on the 25th of May. We're all still here and we're all still in business. However, GDPR hasn't gone away. It is now there in law, it is being enforced, and there are things coming through in the news now about companies that are being fined. There are complaints being made to the ICO, and it is something that we all still should be working on, and we all still should be looking at the way we run our businesses around GDPR. It's a process, it isn't a deadline, and interestingly for me, I've been working with a lot of clients on GDPR for the last few months now, and my GDPR workload actually doubled after the 25th of May, which I hadn't expected. I thought a lot of people would be sorted by then, but actually I had more and more people coming through after the 25th of May. So if you've done nothing, don't worry. I do have some other videos about some of the basics that's worth going back and watching. If you're partway through your journey and you've got questions or you're not sure about things, then please ask me. But today, one thing I really want to talk about today is contracts. So over the last 2 weeks, and if any of my clients watch this, you'll know how much I've been annoying you and bugging you about contracts. Under GDPR, it's really important that we contract with people that are going to have access to the data our clients give us correctly. And I did a poll a couple of weeks ago, and really interestingly, 20% of the business owners polled don't have any form of contracts with people that are working with them in their business. So that could be somebody like a virtual assistant, an accountant, a bookkeeper, your web designer, the person that supports you with your email marketing, an SEO expert. All of these people potentially will have access to some form of data that your clients have given you. And it's your responsibility to make sure that that data is being looked after by them. And they need to be processing it in the way that you want them to. So whilst they're in the UK law, right, and I don't fully understand this, it isn't essential to always have a fully formally written contract. GDPR does require you to have some sort of contract to cover the data processing. So before I talk more about this, I just want to kind of give you a quick overview of some of the definitions within GDPR, which hopefully will help you understand this a little bit more. So within your business, people give you their data. It could be your clients, it could be your customers, but you collect things like names and email addresses and phone numbers on a regular basis. And as the business owner, you decide what you do with that data. You are, and in GDPR terms, the data controller for that data. When you work with somebody such as a virtual assistant, they are being given that data as well. You're passing that on to them so that they can support you in your business. And they become a data processor in the terms of GDPR. And that's where you need a contract, and you need to make sure that they're processing that data and looking after that data in the way that you've told the person that gave you the data you will look after it. Now, that virtual assistant, working on that example, may have associates that they work with. I have associates, I have a team of people that support me, and those people become sub-processors of that data. So my clients get data coming in, they pass it on to me and I become the data processor. I may sometimes pass that on to my associates and they become sub-processors. So those are the three kind of key definitions under GDPR. And it's really important that everybody in those three layers is processing that data in the way that you've told the person that data will be processed. And I probably should move away from saying processing, because it doesn't, this is literally whatever you do with that data, whether you're sending emails to people, keeping a database, responding to emails, whatever you're doing that involves you seeing that information on a regular basis is processing that data. And this is why it's important to have this contract in place. so that you, as the controller of the data, as the business owner, can say, look, I'm going to be sharing this data with you, and this is what I want you to do with it. So things you need to think about with this are, how do you want them to access that data? Should they be doing it on the family computer that the children can access with no passwords on it, or other family members can access, or should they be doing it on a device at home that is purely for business use and that has certain security on it? Do you want them to make sure their devices they use for your work are password protected? Do you want them to be encrypted? Do you want them to use some sort of two-factor authentication to log into systems? It's really being clear with the person processing the data how they should be handling it. You also need to tell them what the purpose of processing the data is, because this is important under GDPR. You need to tell them why they are doing what they're doing with that data, because if they're ever asked as to why, they need to understand why, and it can't just be, well, my client told me to do that. It needs to be one of the reasons that the ICO say is okay and that GDPR say is okay for processing data, and I'll run over those shortly with you as well. They need to know how they would comply with the subject access request. So if I rang your business up tomorrow and said, I want to know all the data that you hold on me, it isn't just the data that you hold on your computer, it's the data that anybody that has worked with you or has processed data for you would hold as well. So you need to tell them what they need to do to comply with that. You need to tell them how they must respond to breaches if they have a breach their end. And you also need to make sure it's really clear with them at the end of your contract what they should then do with the data, how it should be deleted and handed back to you to ensure they don't have it. Now that's actually like a really basic overview of the sorts of things that you should be sharing, but I'm hoping that kind of helps you understand why it's important to have contracts, and for the majority of people that do have contracts, why you need to really review these now post GDPR deadline as kind of the next stage in your GDPR journey, so you can make sure that you and anybody that you're working with that accesses your data knows exactly what they should be doing with it. And I will pop a link into the comments later to the ICO page that gives you a checklist of what you should be including in these contracts. So I really hope that helps. So I talked about lawful bases, and I've talked about lawful bases before, but I thought it would be good because I've had quite a few questions from my clients about this when we've been sorting our contracts out, to give you an overview again of the 6 lawful bases for processing personal data. Now these only apply to personal data. So if you're collecting what's classed as special category data, which is things like health information, religious information, sexual orientation, ethnicity, any of those sorts of things, you have to have a separate lawful basis, and I'm not going to go into that today. But there are 6 lawful bases for personal data. So I'm going to run through each of them, starting with the kind of ones that are most likely going to cover you and going down to the ones that are least likely to. So the first one is contract. So this is anything that relates to a piece of work that you're doing, or a service that you're selling to someone, or a project that you're selling to somebody. Whether that be a definite yes, they're working with you, or whether that be that they've sent you through an inquiry and said, I'd really like to find out more about working with you, I'm really interested in working with you. If you're prospecting in that sense and they've contacted you, contract will cover you for most of those types of activity. If you're going out and emailing people and spamming them going, buy my service, buy my service, buy my service, it won't. But for people that are interested in forming a contract with you, or that have a contract with you, contract is the lawful basis that you should be using. And contract is a very formal word. We're not talking about necessarily a written thing here. If I've come to your website and I've purchased, I don't know, I've just bought a teacher's present for my daughter's teacher, so I've come and purchased that present from your website, we have a contract together because I've made a purchase from your site. The next one is legal obligation. So this is where you're required by law to keep records of certain data. Most common one for most of us is the financial data that we have to hold for HMRC in the UK, which has to be kept for usually around about 6 years if you're a sole trader. I think it may be 7 if you're a limited company. So that is a legal obligation. You may also have a legal obligation through your insurance company to keep data for a fixed period of time, because people are legally allowed to make a claim against you within that time period. So again, you'd want to keep that data for that fixed period of time. The third lawful basis is consent. And this is where the person has given you their explicit permission to hold their data. Now, you need to be really careful about making sure that the reason that you then use that data is for the permission that they gave you. So if I sign up to receive a newsletter about shoes from your company, you can send me information about shoes. I've given you consent to do that. You can't the next week start sending me information about holidays because I didn't give consent for that. I signed up for shoes. I wouldn't then be expecting to suddenly start receiving information about holidays from you, because it's not connected, it's not related in any way, shape or form. So it's being really, really careful about where you use consent and how you're getting that consent, and making sure that people know 100% what they can expect from you. And also remember that consent can be withdrawn. So at any point I can say, actually, I don't want you to have my data anymore. I don't consent to you emailing me anymore. Please take my data off. So obviously be really careful about not using consent if you're providing a service to somebody or you have a contract with somebody, because you then can't contact them about that service that you're providing. The fourth lawful basis is legitimate interest. Now, I think this confuses people, and it confused me for a long time. I thought it was if the person giving me the data was legitimately interested in my business that I could use that. And that isn't correct. So it's your legitimate interest as a business owner to contact them. So a lot of people use this for prospecting. So if I come across someone who I think could be a potential client for me, and I send them an email and say, I'd love to have a chat with you about what I do, I think I'd be a great fit for your company, I would be using my legitimate interest as a business owner to contact them. Now, there's an awful lot of rules around legitimate interest about what you should and shouldn't do in terms of risk assessing your contact with a person. So if you are going to use that, you definitely need to go and read up on that more and understand what you should be doing to make sure that you're within the law of legitimate interest. But that's kind of where you would be using it. The fifth lawful basis is vital interest. Now, this is all about life or death. Most of us in the day-to-day running of our business are never going to be in a position where we need to process somebody's data for a life or death purpose, unless obviously we're working in the health sector, or maybe some therapists might, but it's unlikely that this would cover many of us. But if you think it might, then I definitely, again, go and read up a little bit more about it. The final lawful basis is public task, and this is related to a task that's required by law in the public interest. Again, it's not going to cover most of us. It would cover activities by people like the police and the ambulance service. So again, not really relevant to most of us as business owners, but that is the sixth lawful basis. So really hope that that's kind of clarified a little bit more about what your reasons for processing data are, because you're going to need to know those when you're contracting with people. So really hope that's been useful today. As I always say with GDPR, you don't need to panic. Even if you're sat there and you're watching this now and you're thinking, I haven't got a clue what any of this is, don't panic. Just get in touch, we have a chat, or go over to some of the links that I'll share after the call and find out more about it. There's no need to panic. It is a process. We're all working through it. I don't think anybody can say that they are 100% compliant. I would never say that I will ever be 100% compliant, because things are changing. Things are changing every single day in the data protection world. So even if you get close to that 100% compliance, potentially you could drop down to 70% because the law changes overnight, or a new guidance has come out about it. So please don't panic if you're not there yet. As I said, I really hope some of the definitions in this short video have given you a bit more information. If you've got any questions at all, please do post them. I'll be popping in later on, and I will hopefully see you all on a live video again soon. Bye for now.